What's up, everybody? Today we have a special guest, Mr. Jacob Trogan. Jacob used to work with us in our real estate company, actually. And since then, he's gone off on his own and done over 25 wraps, lease options, seller finance deals. And he's also an equity millionaire at the age of 25. Are you 25, Jacob?
Turned 26 a couple months ago.
Okay, 26. Jacob is overall just an extremely smart guy, builds out things in a very intelligent way. And he recently did a seller finance deal that we're going to call the reverse jacket that is built down a really interesting way. And so one of my biggest thoughts around like philosophies of business is that all business is serving a demographic well, right? And the success of the business is based around what that client needs and the product market fit. If you have a starving crowd and you have a high value need, then you can serve them very well. That's a higher revenue business. If it's a lower value need, it can be lower revenue. The general philosophy of business is like be of service and serve really well. And so one of the things that we do on a lot of our seller finance deals is a lot of the families that we end up working with, a lot of them are first generation Americans, a lot of them are entrepreneurs, 1099 employees. And Jacob put the pieces together in a really interesting and really nice way where he started focusing on buyers first. One of the best things about our model is we get properties, put financing in place, seller finance families, make passive cash flow in between, usually $400 to $1,000 per month. And every deal is worth usually over $100,000 over time. So the people that we're serving is mostly that buyer that the banks will not serve. So the banks have a very tight underwriting of who they will serve. And if you're outside that underwriting scope, you're not getting served by the banks. So there's people that want to buy houses and the banks won't finance them. And that's the problem that overall we solve. And most people come about this from a way where they're focused on the sellers, the property, and they give very little attention to the buyers. Jacob has focused in a different way where he serves the buyers really well. And he has a really interesting deal that he put together. So welcome, Jacob.
Thank you.
Why do you like this business model? What is it about this type of structure, mostly in regards to the buyers? Maybe tell us a little bit of your background and why you like serving this demographic.
I started as a loan officer in real estate in general. And so I was underwriting people for primarily refinances. But regardless, underwriting people is the skill set that I think was the foundation of like how I view things and just the skill of underwriting. That's my favorite part about deals still is underwriting deals, but there's also this underwriting borrower aspect. And I like the Hispanic demographic. And really, it's primarily Hispanic, but it doesn't have to be. It's immigrant business owner, but I'll focus on Hispanic because that's mostly what I've done. I like that demographic because they're very lendable, but the banks say no. So it's just an unserved, untapped market. They are not bankable because they don't have proof of income. They don't declare taxes necessarily, whether illegally doing that or legally doing that. And that's a whole question. But these people are legally able to own homes and you can legally seller finance them. There's a conversation about the legality of underwriting them and giving loans. So you have to be careful with that. But overall, they're a great borrower who pays early or on time or extra. They don't default. And you're getting skin in the game is a term that lenders use. So from the lender perspective, they're a really great person I want to be the bank for. When the banks say no, I'll say yes. I also have a special emotional attachment to them because I speak Spanish. I lived in Mexico doing like a church mission. They're hardworking people. They're very industrious. They're very honest and just like in very stable jobs. Typically, it's usually blue collar jobs. I'm not super concerned about like the foundation of a lot of our economy, construction, just their humbleness, I like them in general.
Cool. You recently did a deal where you found the buyer first, and you basically were the party planner where you found the buyer, they had a down payment, you connected them to a property that was on market, you brought the property to the buyer, put the pieces together, financing in place, and now you're cash flowing from that deal. Can you tell us about that deal?
Yeah, I didn't even bring the property to them. They brought the property to me. I took it as a signal. I had been stating I wanted to do this, but ideally a wrap is you're not rehabbing it. I've done full rehabs before, or I buy and sell as is. I like as is more because I don't have to step into rehab. So I was like, how can I do more of these? To be honest, some of the pain I'm facing now is why I'm doing this. As we speak, I have a few vacant houses. There's various reasons for a few of them. And I have these vacant houses because I bought them with the intention to sell them on seller financing. And they're not selling for various reasons. And generally, the main problem is I went outside my buy box because I know what these buyers want. but it's frustrating. It's like, I got these houses, and a lot of that is because there's been more competition recently. You got to be better. There's more people entering this space, particularly in Kansas City. You can't just say, give me 50K down for my house anymore. My first deal, I got 40K down on a house that needed some rehab, and it was a good deal for him. He's made wealth from it, but just there's more competition, so you have to think differently. My pain created this solution. I have empty houses. I'm paying. One of the worst things about having properties is the holding costs when they're vacant. How can I eliminate holding costs, have no market risk, and no rehab? And it's like, I just find the buyer before I even buy the house. And so they picked the house for me on the MLS and told me, hey, can you buy this house for us? And I said yes, and I marked it up and agreed to a higher price than what I was buying it for. They were aware of this. And then I seller financed them at, I ended up giving them a 9.5%, and I'm getting a loan on it for, it's around 7.25. So there's some arbitrage going on. They were qualified with a down payment, and besides the down payment, not a ton else, because it's very hard with these buyers. So that's one thing you got to be generous on. Yeah.
Nice, amazing. So the buyer, you already had that connection to that buyer through other deals they've done. They wanted to buy a house. They couldn't get financing from the bank. They chose the property for you on the MLS. Did you get a discount on that acquisition cost?
I ended up doing a seller credit to basically, they paid for my financing costs. So my only out of pocket was my down payment.
Nice.
Yeah, I negotiated it. It had been on the market one day when he's like, hey, I want this house. My wife really wants it. Okay. Surprisingly, despite the market not being super hot, like a little bit of a bidding war. So I basically paid list price. List price minus about $8,000 in seller credits. I think there's a lot of ways I could have structured it even better, got more of a discount and negotiated more. I would recommend people be careful not going for less than 5 days on market properties. There is something to say is like, the buyer wanted the house and they were motivated and they're like, yeah, I'll pay a premium. I don't care. So the house was listed for 235 and they agreed to a price with me of 265. They knew exactly what I was paying. They knew I was paying 235 basically, and they didn't care. So that's a 30K upsell, and they don't even care.
And they paid down 20% of the entry fee?
I did this one on 10% down. So this one, I have mixed feelings on it because it's a temporary bridge loan is what I did. And so I recommend that to people, but you have to be careful. So this buyer not only had 35,000 saved up, but also had 40,000 saved up. So they had all the money for the rehab. We estimated the rehab would take 40,000. I think it was more like a 50K rehab, but I went over with him line by line on his prices, and he was getting some good prices because he was Guatemalan. So he had some like friends helping him out. He was getting it done for 40. He had about 75,000 total. We'll see how this plays out. He's rehabbing it, and we estimated the ARV of the property is actually around 350. So he found the deal himself. I didn't do it. And it was like one day on market. It was a very discounted property for just primarily cosmetic stuff, but it had some foundation. So I actually tried to initially go in and get a conventional loan, but problems with the appraisal where we had to do like a foundation inspection. And I was like, screw it, forget about this. We're just going to do a bridge loan. And luckily with bridge loans, you can do bridge loans with 0% down or 10% down, but most are 10% down. I did a 10% down bridge loan. So I paid 23 grand out of my pocket, and the buyer gave me 35. So I netted $12,000 up front, and I should be making more as we refinance. I believe this deal will make me about 22 grand from just putting the deal together, and then $500 a month in cash flow. So that's what.
So 22,000 up front?
Yes.
And then $500 a month.
Yep.
Okay, so this one's a little more complex. You can bring the buyer in, and you don't need to do the rehab management. You're being in the place of like you're the lender, or you're in the place of the lender because you're making sure they're doing the work right. You make sure you vet them so they know how to do the work, because they're doing the renovation, then you're doing the refinance. And a different way you could have put this together is if the property did work for conventional, you could have bought it with conventional or a DSCR loan, used their 20% down as the down payment, gotten into the deal for $0 or made money at the closing, and still cash flowed without additional management for a few weeks or months.
I like this better. And it honestly, I feel like it was a blessing the way it worked out, because it made me see the potential. I'm acting as a hard money lender for this buyer who doesn't have credit, because even though hard money lenders do just care about the asset, they usually look at credit too. And yes, could they maybe get hard money, but these buyers probably can't get hard money either. I was acting as the hard money lender for this buyer, and I liked that because if I had went and bought this property with 20% down, that would have been about $46,000 out of my pocket. The buyer only had 35, which is still a healthy down payment, but that means I would have been net money out of pocket, and I would have cash flowed a little bit more. But now I have no money in the deal. I'm getting paid and I'm cash flowing. I like to buy real estate where I don't have any money left in the property. My standard is if I'm leaving money in a deal, it's a bad deal, but that's just my standard because I'm willing to do rehab. I think a lot of people, it would be a great strategy. And this is what I was initially trying to do, was I was actually trying to bring in a third-party investor, bring in the buyer. That investor was fine getting a 20% cash on cash return, which is very healthy. They were happy with that. I think it's a great return. They were going to leave money in the deal. That's required if you do the 20% down strategy, which is a lot simpler, a lot less moving parts. And I originally was trying to do that, but this like almost opened up a new avenue for me of, oh, I can do this with a good plan. I've done this in the past where I put a buyer in there and they did the rehab. I didn't manage it. I didn't check it properly. Had problems pop up. So yeah, I think there's good ways to do this. I don't know if I'd recommend this for everyone. I don't think it's bad, but you got to be careful with this strategy because you're getting a temporary loan and depending on another third party to get you out of that loan and rehab up to ARV level. So there's some risk.
There's a slightly more advanced strategy. Once you understand how the loan products work, because if they did bring 20% down and you bought it with a DSCR loan, because you only took, you said 35,000 is less than 20% down, but if they had 20% down, you could have used that for your entry fee on that loan and left very little in the deal, maybe nothing in the deal. So there are ways to get that 100% cash out immediately. Then you have in returns. That's like one of the beautiful things about seller financing, like this exit strategy, is that there are ways to do it where you have infinite returns. Where like most investors, if you're looking at traditional rental, want like 15% cash on cash or 12% cash on cash. Doing the seller finance exit strategy, like most of our students, people that we work with, they're 50 to 100% cash on cash or all the capital out with the down payment or the entry fee. There's not many ways in investing you can do that.
No, there needs to be some operator aspect. It's hard to get that infinite return unless you're willing to be in the ring more. Quite honestly, I make my money from real estate. If I was making money outside of real estate, I wouldn't want to shift my focus and get a second job. I just want to buy the property, get me tax benefits, cash flow, and it's an investment. There's lots of ways to do real estate. This is an operator way. And I think other people can do it somewhat passively. You have to be a little bit more in it. So basically, the more time you're willing to put into something, the more return you can get for it. And I think every person just has to decide for themselves if that's worth it or not. And I do recommend it to a lot of people, but that also introduces risk. Is if you're the one being the operator and you suck, you're going to lose money. I've really started to see that not everyone should be an operator unless you want to be an expert. Do you want to be an expert? Yes or no? Everyone can be an expert, but you got to pay to play for one, do education, pay. Like I worked in the industry, spend time learning or partner with somebody who knows how to play. Yeah.
Yep, for sure. I'd imagine most people who have gotten this far in this video they're probably operators or people that like care enough about real estate that they actually want to do it. Because you have to be an operator. If you're going to do real estate, unless you do have the high paying W-2 and you want to do traditional rentals, you need to operate something, whether that's your direct to seller marketing, renovations, or putting the pieces together in some sort of way. There's inherent risk regardless. When we first started, I was actually very scared to buy a house, only wholesale for the first year-ish, year and a half maybe. And when we had our first opportunity to put our first wrap deal together, we double closed on it. We found the buyer and brought the buyer at the same time that we were closing. Because I personally was like, I don't want to take on this house and not know what to do with it on the exit side. And that for me, with like my risk tolerance, was like the way that I structured it. Probably for the first 5-ish. And then we're like, okay, we see we have something here. Now, like we can scale this up a little bit and take down properties and put the pieces together in like more of a higher risk way.
Yeah, my confidence in executing has gone up, but my confidence in the buyers has gone down. To compensate for that risk or that confidence going down, I just want to get the buyer first now. And so I think this makes less money sometimes than if you go get the property first. I think it can make just as much, but in general, you're going to have a bit more transparency. And with that, you're going to have, I think this is somewhat of a living belief, but there is some pushback on pricing.
It's supply and demand. For anyone watching this video thinking about this model, do it now because Kansas City is a great case study of how competition can swarm in. Because when we first started doing this, we're really some of the only people that were doing it. And we told our friends and they told their friends. Now there's a lot of competition in Kansas City. We have two friends selling houses for 5,000, 7,000 down, doing it at volume. So it's everything is going to be, and it's going to be supply and demand. So if you're thinking about it, take action now. I consider this a blue ocean. There's a starving demographic, and there's high demand and low supply, right? And that's what creates a blue ocean. So this is a blue ocean in many markets around the country. When you find that blue ocean, you can keep going deeper to find the new blue ocean when that one's saturated. And I think going buyer first is that next is one step ahead of the curve of what everyone else is learning, what everyone else is doing, is taking that next step, know your skill sets, know what gives you energy, know what's interesting and exciting to you, and follow that. For example, you lived in Mexico, you speak Spanish. A lot of the people you work with end up speaking Spanish, and you like serving that demographic. And then before you were doing the jacket strategy, so you were doing the buy and you were renovating, you're doing the rehabs, and then you're refinancing and then seller financing. That was the skill set you wanted to learn, the rehab, and then you realized you don't necessarily love rehabs.
I actually still love rehabs. You have holding costs. Every rehab seems to go over budgets no matter how well I prepare. I end up making more money on rehabs, bigger spreads, but it's slower velocity. They take longer. So there's just pros and cons of different strategies. I don't like the mindset of doing 10 things, but you should have at least a few things in your tool, at least a few. Too many investors are way too spread out with their focus, but you can't just have one thing either. And I think that's a mistake I made. You got to give a little bit. This blue ocean, 5 years from now, I will not be very surprised if you have this happening a lot more. And it's like wholesaling. You can still make good money in wholesaling. Wholesalers are killing it, but you have to be better. It's more competitive. More people chasing the same sellers. Cost per deal, cost per contract is higher. Some people are getting driving for dollars or whatever, but it just costs more marketing spend. And so that's what this is right now. Is this will become something that is targeted more, and you're gonna have more competition
For sure.
But for now, yeah, my biggest regret with wraps is I didn't go more aggressively. I am grateful though that I was just very consistent. I would do one a month, but I do regret slightly. And I think it's really easy to just be like, oh, I wish I would have gone a little bit faster, because taking advantage of less competition while I could was nice.
Yeah. Yeah, man, for sure. This is how business cycles work. You're young guys, new to entrepreneurship. I guess I've been not doing entrepreneurship for 9 years. And I feel like everything's speed to execution, but speed takes confidence. The opportunities will always be there, but they always disappear. They dissipate. I was doing e-commerce and drop shipping, and I saw that get super competitive. Wholesaling also gets super competitive. And so you have to find that the further niche, but they're continuing to evolve and happen. But like right now, I agree. Like in 5 years, I would think that there's going to be a lot of people doing this in every major market. We have students in Rap Academy who are some of the first in their market, and we're building out the infrastructure in those locations.
I do think this mindset that I said buyer first, there's nothing new under the sun. There's nothing new. This has been done. It's just you have and particularly this is evident in real estate. I can't think of examples in other industries, but I'm sure it happens, like wholesaling. This advertising channel is really good right now. This one that used to be amazing now sucks. You got to constantly shift your marketing channel. It's just a micro tweak, but they'll cycle through. This is just a cycle. Part of that is because it's a buyer's market, at least in Kansas City in general. I would describe it as a buyer's market. It's very market dependent. Inventory, start with the constraint. So that was some of the idea behind this too, is what is my constraint right now? I can't sell my houses, so it's not even a problem. But yeah, I think it's clear. If anyone's curious on it, I think just talking to people who want to own homes and trying to help them, it comes from a service mindset. Like with wholesaling, you can start direct and find a deal, or get a buyer buy box and a shop for them. There's some risk, but it reduces your risk a lot. You've almost eliminated the need for dispo at that point. So it's just the same mindset.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Thanks for coming on and sharing. I think this is a fun case study. There's a lot here, right? Business principles, blue ocean strategies, capitalizing on opportunity, stepping off the sidelines and taking action because you have to. And there's also just like the ways that market change over time. So I think you've done like an awesome job. You've done a really amazing job of being consistent. 2.5 years, one per month at that pace, and you built up, you're out of the rat race, right? Your burn rate is covered by your monthly cash flow. And that's like the step number one to get. And I think you've done a really awesome job of like just showing up, being consistent, doing it, learning lessons. Nothing is a cakewalk, and you always choose your poison. Like everything that we do in life has lessons because that's like the communication of God. Life would be really boring if we didn't learn and grow along the way. But yeah, so
I can share one lesson in the early podcast with Brandon Turner. He would take some life lesson and apply. I was like, whoa, I get it. Brandon Turner does as well. But I recently went on a date with my wife. We went bowling, and I suck at bowling. Last time we went, I sucked pretty bad. I was not consistent at all. So I said, my only goal this time, I consistently get the ball down the middle and not gutter. I started developing a process. Take 4 steps. On 4, I move like this, put my foot to the side. I had a very specific process. I started watching the people around me. There was a random afternoon on a Monday. I like to do day nights like that. And there was like pro bowlers there, and then also like a couple amateur people. And pro bowlers had the same form every time. My wife, who would sometimes gutter, sometimes not, I just watched how much her form changed. And then the people to our left, completely erratic, and sometimes they get a strike, sometimes they wouldn't. And so I started off a little rough, but then I was consistently getting 9 pins down every roll. I searched up the percentiles. This is how my brain works now. You can't do anything like nothing's isolated. I searched up the percentiles, like, oh, I'm pretty above average with that score. I didn't even train. I just stuck to a process and had fun with it. It wasn't robotic and boring, but I broke it down. It was consistent in my process, and that's it. And that consistency alone made me elevate to, it was like, I think it was like the 80th percentile. If you can be consistent, you will be above most people. And that's a great first step.
I spoke to a friend of mine who's like a very successful entrepreneur. He has several 7, 8-figure digital marketing agencies. And now when he chooses, he says now he knows he can execute, right? And the biggest thing for him is choosing the opportunity. And so once you have a good opportunity, you stay focused and go in, and your process like gets formed over time. But like for him now, it's like, what is the biggest, highest potential opportunity I can step into? Because he knows he's going to perform, right? He has a track record. He knows whatever he steps into, he can make it work. What we're doing in real estate is a great opportunity for investors. Thanks for coming on. If you want to get a hold of you, Jacob Trogan on Facebook.
Facebook is where to find me.
Yeah, follow Jacob on Facebook. Jacob does a lot of really thoughtful posts and stories, and he's a great person to follow. And he's also just like a very smart guy and a really good real estate investor. And he does a great job of posting his wins and struggles. So I definitely highly recommend giving him a follow and checking in with him, and send him deals or say hi as well. So thanks everyone for tuning in. If you come in this far, be sure to subscribe, leave a comment, ask questions, join our school community, reach out to me. We're here to serve. Thank you guys for watching.